Hi everyone and welcome to my channel and to this short time-lapse version of a Bassett Hound in soft pastel. If you enjoy this here, then please do hit the subscribe button here on YouTube and check out all my other playlists here with lots of information about soft pastel. And I'll also release some longer tutorials from this one over on my Patreon channel. All links in the description below. For this one, I'm working on the sienna colour of pastel matte paper, and I'm using mostly Unison Pastels, one of my favourite pastel brands. And you'll also see that I'll use some pastel pencils too, although it's mostly done with the big sticks. So what I'm starting with is the background, and I normally like to start with the background and sort of work the painting from background to foreground in terms of how the objects layer up. And in this case, it's a nice tan colour of sofa. And my client asked me to remove some of the other colourful blankets in the photo reference. I did have another photo reference of just the sofa to work from. And I sort of pieced together what would be happening underneath those blankets if we could see the rest of the sofa. I think it works out a little bit nicer for the composition in the painting. It sort of simplifies the background and it makes it possible for me to unify the colours throughout the painting a little more. So quite a lot of time spent working on the sofa. A little bit of imagination used in certain areas. Something I could definitely go into more detail on in some longer tutorials. As quite often, a photo reference isn't quite perfect for the painting, but there's usually quite a lot you can do, quite a lot of artistic license you can use, and hopefully make big improvements to the original photo reference in your painting. So lots of rich brown earth colours used, but also some greys and blues brought in for the shadow tones and little bits of reflection. But many of these warm toned colours will be the colours that I use to make up the fur on the dog. So I'm always trying to create colour harmony by bringing that full colour palette throughout the painting. But as you can see, quite a lot of attention paid to the sofa first. And I always like to get the background in because, as you can see here, I've actually come over the outline of the dog with the background colours. And I deliberately smudge the background colours in over my outline of whatever the subject matter is. That way, when I add the edges of the dog, that will sit nicely on top of the background. It will look really seamless. And I can work on making those edges either nice and crisp where they need to be, or creating nice, soft, hairy edges too. So you can see most of the early work done with the big sticks. Working from dark to light. And working up to a higher level of detail, because in the first stages I'm really just blocking in, but giving a rough sense of the direction of the fur, even in the lower layers. So I don't just block in one colour solidly. I really try to start creating the texture of the fur from the very first layer of pastel. And I find that really helps me in mapping out the face, because when you start to look at a big face like this, you can see just how many changes of direction there are in the fur. And it's all of that that I'm trying to capture, as it really describes the structure of the dog's face. So I'm trying to make my marks in the direction of the fur in that particular place on the face. And that's something that I have many tutorials already all about on my Patreon channel. You'll also find a few full-length tutorials here for free on my YouTube channel. And many of these tutorials show you from the very beginning right to the end of a painting. And it's got my narration on there. Some of them have color codes popping up to let you know exactly what color I'm using. So they're really ideal if you're tempted to try out soft pastel but don't really know where to begin. I'll talk you right through the process. And in each of the tutorials, there are so many different techniques covered. However, if you watch a few of my tutorials, you'll start to notice some patterns where it's the same techniques that I'm often using, even if the subject matter is different. So onto the eye. And of course, Bassett Hounds are known for their big, expressive eyes. So I was really looking forward to this part. To be honest, I don't really spend a huge amount of time on the eyes, as I treat every part of the portrait with the same level of attention and detail. But it was certainly a beautiful eye to work on. They're known for their slightly droopy features. You can see the big long ears that are yet to come. But their droopy features make them so adorable. I haven't painted too many Bassett Hounds, so I was really delighted to get such a great photo reference from my client. Something you don't always get. And I'm always talking about the importance of good photo reference. Something where you can really see not only lots of detail, because sometimes the less detailed photos can translate very nicely into a painted portrait. But it's more that we can see the animal's character or personality. And I think even without having met Maldini the Bassett Hound, I'm guessing that this photo really does sum up his personality. He looks like a dog that I feel I know. Of course, I know his face pretty well now after spending so many hours looking at it. So again, like I did on the sofa, even though there are lots of warm brown tones used on this, I'm also bringing in some of these cooler lilac greys. Any areas where there is white fur, I'm also thinking about shadow colours there too. So it's not pure white that I'm using, although you can see me bring in some brighter highlights to pick up some of the brighter areas on the white fur. But anytime you're painting anything white, you really need to try and look for all of the other colours that you can see reflecting there, or shadow tones. And that pure white, your brightest highlight, should be saved for those really brightest areas. It's always a good idea, if you're struggling to see how light or dark you need to go, to change your photo reference into grayscale. And if you're in the middle of your painting, then take a quick photograph of it and change it into grayscale too. Sometimes just taking colour out of the equation can help you analyse how light or dark you need to go. But you can see many of those colours that I used on the sofa now used throughout the dog, including the same blue tones that I used on the sofa as some reflections. Also bringing lots of that into the areas of white fur. So the more you can reuse your colour palette throughout the painting, the more colour harmony you'll create. And these lovely folds of flesh that come down the side of the face. And finally onto this rather large droopy ear. So a lot of fun to work on this one. My patrons over on Patreon have requested a few full-length tutorials from this piece. And that's what I'm going to work on for next month over there. But if you're interested in learning more from me, you can check out all of the tutorials that I have available in my tutorials library at emmacolbertart.com. And you'll see many, many different subject matters, but a huge library of dog portraits, as that's something I've done a lot of over the years, and I've filmed quite a few of them for tutorials as well. So if you're painting a pet portrait that you're struggling with, perhaps you'll find a tutorial there that covers something similar. So again, on the ear, just like on the other sections of fur, working from dark to light, bringing in little bits of pastel pencil here and there, but really not that much. And for pastel pencils, I use a mixture of different brands. I use some Faber-Castell Pitt pastel pencils, and I use a white General's pencil, and I get asked about it a lot because it's excellent. And if you're interested, it's General's 4414. That's my favorite white pencil. But as I say, most of the work is done with the bigger pastel sticks. I just love the strength and vibrance that you get from those. I barely have to touch the pastel matte paper to get a really strong mark, but I can vary the pressure that I apply to create different sized marks. They're extremely versatile and can give you such a variety of different marks. And of course, when it comes to painting animals, I find they are really my favourite medium for that. The very nature of them and being soft and so easily blended makes them perfect for creating that soft fur effect. So onto the paws in the foreground. And of course it's important to create those little bits of dark shadow underneath the paws. Try to make them look like they're really on the surface of the sofa. But I hope that you've enjoyed watching this come together in time lapse here. I always enjoy making these shorter time lapse videos, as it's nice to see the whole process condensed into a shorter time. But if you'd like to see me slow down and go into greater detail on my techniques and really take you step by step through painting something like this, then do remember to check me out on Patreon. But thanks very much for watching this here. I hope that you'll subscribe on YouTube if you enjoyed this. And until next time, happy pasteling.